Welcome back to Real Shit, where we like to talk real shit all day, every day, all for the love of movies. I am Joe, and today I'm here to talk about the new diversity policy for the Academy Awards. I'll get into that in just a minute, but before I do, please, if you're new to the channel, like, comment, share, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell for notifications. Any little bit of feedback or support would be greatly appreciated. Without further adu, I'm going to get right into it because obviously I have a lot to cover here. Before I do, I'm going to set the table for you and try to explain to you where I'm coming from with this, because I had to be very cautious about how I approach this, because I know anything I say is going to be taken the wrong way anyway. But for the most part, I'm trying to be as level-headed about this as I possibly can be, and there was some good to come out of this news today. And in my particular opinion, there was a couple things that aren't so good, but I'll get into exactly what those are. But before I do, I'm going to get into something just for a moment that happened to me a while back. After the 2019 Oscars, basically I made a reaction video, and I essentially was talking about how Parasite winning the Best Picture Oscar seemed like it was an attempt by the Academy to, I guess you could say, virtue signal in a way. And what I mean by that is it was their way of, I guess, answering everyone's complaints about the lack of diversity in the Oscar nominees as well as in the Academy itself. And it just felt disingenuous to me. I never once said that the movie didn't deserve Best Picture. In fact, a few days before, I actually gave a review to the movie, and I gave it a stellar 9 out of 10 review. I said the hype is real and it definitely deserved to be in the conversation. I even predicted that it would win. But I simply wanted to ask the question, did the Oscar go to Parasite for all the wrong reasons? And of course I got nothing but flack for this, because no one could possibly come on YouTube and just listen to someone else's opinion or have someone ask a question and not jump to conclusions about that person. Like, no one actually listened to what I said in the video. They just jumped down my throat, and it was probably one of my most watched videos, and at the same time one of my most downvoted videos, because everyone thought I was trying to say something and I wasn't. So that brings me to this particular topic, because I know it's very possible I could get a similar reaction to a video like this. But here's my thing. I am obviously a huge fan of film, of all types of film. I take film very seriously, and what I mean by that is I'm not getting, life lessons from film. That's not what I mean. What I mean by I take it seriously is I want to protect the sanctity of film. I want to protect the art, because I feel like the art is under attack right now. And not just in this particular case, but I've mentioned many times before how things like cancel culture and things like anything like that, any kind of other political reasons that people try to bring into film, usually it ends with the film suffering because of it, because the focus is taken away from creativity and it's put on other things like diversity or inclusion or whatever the case may be. That doesn't mean that I'm against diversity and inclusion in movies. I'm just saying it shouldn't be the prime focus of making a movie. Now, if that's wrong for me to say, then I'm sorry, but that's just how I feel. And to me, it's not wrong of me to think that way. So when we come to the news that we have today about the new diversity policy for the Academy and the Oscars eligibility, I'm going to go through it real quick. As I mentioned, there's a couple things that I actually do like about the new policy. One being that they're actually implementing a quarterly viewing process, making movies all year around available to Academy voters. And I think that is actually a really good idea, because it expands the field. It gives movies opportunities that wouldn't normally have them. And I think it's always been a problem with the Oscars, because you shouldn't be winning an Oscar based on when the movie is released. Like, a lot of times if a movie is released, say, right after an Oscar ceremony, it'll be forgotten about by the time the next Oscars come around, and then people just don't vote for it. And I don't think that's necessarily right. I think from the moment one Oscars voting ends, anything released after that should be eligible for next year's Oscars. So I think it's really good that other movies now are going to have the opportunity to be seen that maybe didn't get seen before, get that kind of exposure. So I think that's a really good thing. The Best Picture category is being set back to 10 nominees. This could be a good and a bad thing. I think a lot of times, if I remember correctly, when it was 10 nominees before, I had questions whether or not all 10 of those nominees were actually worthy of being nominated. But I don't see it as necessarily a bad thing because, again, you're exposing a lot more movies, you're giving a lot more movies a bit more shine, and it's, again, expanding possibilities, expanding what possibly people could watch as well, like, because the Oscars really want to cater to people, to movies that more people see, and you've kind of seen that recently in the past few years with stuff like Black Panther and Joker, I guess you could say, would be another one, and movies like that have a little bit more of a pop culture, I guess, influence on them, or specifically comic book influence, but those movies are getting recognized more and more. I think it started with The Dark Knight for sure. But I think we just have to be careful about letting too many movies in, because then the pool becomes diluted as well. Like, sometimes just having a movie eligible kind of takes away the prestige from the award. And I'm going to get into more of that in a minute also. The other part that I think is a good thing is basically they're going to have a policy both with Academy members and just in the film industry of making a bigger effort to diversify both Academy members and who is chosen for film crews, acting, etc., etc. So they're going to place emphasis, I guess, on making sure people of color or whatever the case may be aren't left out in those decisions or aren't being overlooked for certain jobs. And I think that is a good thing. And I think it's very possible that some of them could be getting overlooked. I'm not saying there aren't people in the world in power that are racist and are against, people of different ethnicities. That's not what I'm saying at all. I'm not so dumb that I can't comprehend that. But I will say that this is a good thing because it is very possible that there are people getting held back, and now they're going to get an opportunity to prove themselves, and I think that's a good thing as well. The next part is the part where I have an issue, and this is probably the part where I'm going to get down votes, but I really don't care because this is just how I feel. Again, I'm about preserving the integrity of film, preserving the integrity of the Oscars. And in my personal opinion, this next part, and it's only one line in this whole thing that they put out, but it's one line that stands out, and I could be misinterpreting it, but I think it's something that could be damaging to the reputation of the Oscars. Yes, they'll be looked at favorably from a diversity aspect, but it's a slippery slope, the route that they're choosing to take with this particular topic. So essentially, they're working on representation and inclusion standards for Oscars eligibility to be established. So essentially, there's going to be a task force made up of industry leaders to develop and implement new representation and inclusion standards for Oscars eligibility. And this is where I run into a problem, because that to me, now I could again be misinterpreting, but that to me basically says that if they don't meet, if the filmmaking or the film itself, the entire crew, whatever, doesn't meet your eligibility standards as far as inclusion goes, as far as having the right amount of different races employed in the film, that you won't be eligible. And I just find that to be ridiculous, to be quite honest. What if, for instance, a filmmaker is making a historically accurate film about, I don't know, anything that's historically accurate that wouldn't necessarily have people of color in that story, and a majority of the cast or all of the cast has to be white for historically accurate purposes, so that you're going to tell me that movie isn't eligible for an Oscar, possibly, because it doesn't have any African Americans in the cast, or any Asian Americans in the cast, or any Hispanic Americans in the cast. Like, I think that is putting a limit on the amount of stories you can tell, because, and again, you can have people behind the scenes. I guess you could hire more people for the crew to make up for the lack of people on screen, but we all know that that won't fly with the current climate. We need to see this. We need to see, like, if someone sees a predominantly white acted movie, they're going to have issues with it no matter what you do, no matter what's going on behind the scenes, because that's the current climate right now. They're programmed to attack things like that, even if they're not meant to be done in a malicious way. Like, I don't think that people who hire a predominantly white cast are necessarily doing it on purpose. It's just what the movie calls for. I think this happened a few years ago with Clint Eastwood, actually, when he was questioned about not having any African Americans in his movie, and he said he was making a war movie, and he basically said that he made it historically accurate. There wouldn't be African Americans in this story, and he still caught flack for it. And I just find things like that to be troubling, to be quite honest, because you're putting a limit on the stories that you can tell. And this sets a bad precedence, in my personal opinion, because, again, it's putting the focus on things like diversity, on things like inclusion, over story. The Oscars, the awards themselves, I'm not talking about the Academy members, I'm not talking about the employment of people across the film industry. I'm talking about the awards themselves should be based solely on the quality of the film. That is what the Oscars are. That's why you don't have big budget blockbusters being nominated, because they are not Academy Award worthy films, because the quality isn't there. It's about the writing, it's about the directing, it's about the acting, it's about the cinematography, it's about the production design. All of that encompasses what the Oscars are about. Diversity and inclusion should not be a factor in whether or not you get nominated for an Oscar. I think that's setting a bad precedence, and I think it brings to mind all the people, all of the African American actors, for instance. I'll just stick with actors, but there's been directors, there's been writers who've all won Oscars, but all the African American actors, from Denzel Washington to Halle Berry to Octavia Spencer to Viola Davis, Regina King, whoever the case may be, all of these actors won their award because they knocked their roles out of the park. They did their job so well that year that every other person that came up against them, or every other person that was nominated against them, didn't stand a chance, and they blew them out of the water, and they let their talent and their acting speak for them. That's why they won the award. Now, if you're winning awards with these new guidelines in place, doesn't that cheapen the award a little bit, because you're not winning it on your own merits? You're winning it because basically the Academy was forced to nominate you, or possibly give you the award, or vote for you for that award. Like, you see what I'm saying? Like, it's a slippery slope, and I don't think we want to go down it. Like, if anything, this makes the awards that Denzel Washington and Halle Berry won that much more prestigious, because now they did it without these guidelines. They just did it on their own merits. They didn't have these guidelines to basically get them to the point where they could win an Oscar. They did it all on their own, and I think that makes it much more special. To put in guidelines like this and tell people that they have to hire these people or they have to hire these people, like, I wouldn't want to win an award that way. If it was me, personally, I would take offense to it almost, to be quite honest, because I think it's basically saying that you can't win the award without specific guidelines to help you, and I don't think that that's the right way to handle this current situation. So it's not that I'm against increased diversity in Hollywood. Like, that's not the issue here. I never would have a problem with that. I know some people are going to take it that way, but that's just not what I'm saying here. If you really listen to what I'm trying to say here, it's about preserving the prestige of the Oscars, of film. And I think it's very important that we don't set quotas and use that to base who wins awards. That's basically what I'm getting at. And I know I'm going to catch flack for saying that, but it is what it is. It's how I feel. It's just, it's weird to me that, like, this is where we're at with pop culture, and this is what people are looking for when they watch movies. Like, all throughout I was a kid and most of my adult life, I just watched movies. I never really thought about the race of a character. Like, it's never really crossed my mind. Like, that wasn't really important to me, and I don't think it's important to most people who go to watch a movie. I think white guys appreciate Denzel just like black guys can appreciate, I don't know, Mark Hamill as Luke Skywalker. I mean, not that I'm putting them on the same pedestal, but you get what I'm saying. Like, I don't think race has anything to do with a person's ability to actually enjoy a movie, like some people would have you believe. It doesn't have anything to do with that. You just go to a movie because you want to see a good story told. You want to see a good performance by a great actor, no matter what color he is. And I just never really, I never really thought of things like this prior to everyone bringing it up. Now I think about it because it's so thrown down my throat and ingrained in my head. Like, now every time that I see a predominantly black cast, I'm like, is that because the story called for it? Or are you trying to force some initiative? You know what I'm saying? Or predominantly Asian cast or white, or it doesn't really matter what race it is. But now you put it in people's minds and they start thinking about these things, and it's like you're taking away from the movie itself. People can't just watch the movie for what it is and just absorb it and appreciate it for what it is. Now they're looking for things that shouldn't even be a factor in when you're watching a movie. And that's unfortunate because it's going to make the art itself suffer, and that's not what I want. I don't think that's what anyone wants. So I think this new initiative by the Academy, there's some good points to it, but there's also one major fatal flaw, and it's that one part about how inclusion and the diversity of your cast and crew is basically going to determine whether you're eligible to win an award or not. And I think that is I don't think that's good. I don't think that's good for entertainment, for cinema, for film, for anybody. So let me know what you think about all of this in the comments down below. I didn't mean to kind of go on this long about it, but it's something I'm obviously very passionate about. I hope people can just listen to this and try to understand where I'm coming from and not jump to conclusions but I know some people probably will. So if you're going to just go down in the comments and start bashing me, I probably won't even answer you because I just don't have time for people like that. If you want to have a conversation with me, I'd be more than happy to do so, but just come to me with a level head and don't just assume the worst of me. Let me just put it that way. I won't assume the worst of you if you don't assume the worst of me. So definitely, let's continue this discussion down in the comments below. I'm looking forward to talking to all of you about this and seeing your thoughts on it. Other than that, please like, comment, share, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell for notifications, and I'll see you next time right here on Real Shift. Thank you for watching. Talk to you next time. Peace out.